Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Whole Health Monday here at Gravity Center. And as we kind of make our way into this webinar, we're going to begin with a few words from Chris.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is me and Basil coming to you live from the Gravity Center here in Omaha, Nebraska. Do you want to say hi to the people? Hey, do you want to say hi to look, do you want to say hi to the people? And we're just really grateful for every one of you who logged on and registered for this webinar. Like we mentioned last week during our guided meditation practice, what we're going to try to do is to bring some of our programming online and to try to make these things more accessible and available to everyone. And so for at least the next 5 weeks, we're going to sort of plug in some routine wellness webinars on Mondays, on Wednesdays, and on Fridays, starting at this hour at 4 p.m. Central Time. And what we'll do is we'll record these so that we can post these online later if you miss them, or if there's some of these that you'd like to share with friends. But the format and the structure will go like this. On Mondays, we're going to reach out to an expert or a specialist to help us sort of discuss what it looks like to stay grounded and what it looks like to stay healthy and centered right now, especially during these uncertain times and in these times of self-isolation, social distancing, and shelter in place. And so these will be Whole Health Mondays, and these will really be dedicated to your body, to your mind, and to your spirit. And so we'll bring in mental health professionals and medical professionals and spiritual professionals, really healers to kind of offer direction and guidance. On Wednesdays, we'll continue to offer guided mindfulness practice. And I understand on one hand, yes, a lot of us are staying home. Yes, a lot of us lives have been turned upside down. A lot of us have more time on our hands now than we have in the past. And so it's easy for somebody to just say, hey, now's the perfect time to meditate. But we know this, our brains are in fight, flight, and freeze mode right now. And for a lot of us to drop into a mindfulness practice marked by solitude, silence, or stillness actually triggers a lot of anxiety. And so what we're going to try to do is to offer a little bit of guided practice to help you all. And these guided practices will include some silence and non-conceptual elements. They'll include some readings, and they'll include some breath work. And we'll just try to do this together, journey together. And so those will be our Wednesday wellness webinars. And then finally on Fridays, we're going to call it Kids Contemplation Fridays. And this is especially an extraordinary time for the most vulnerable among us, which are our children. But as we know this, sometimes they're the most resilient. And so this is for children of all ages, including kids as old as me, who might need a little bit of help and a little bit of support to just find ways to go inward and to reflect on how we are and how we're caring for ourselves. So you'll need to register for any of these wellness webinars. But like I said, we'll do them at 4 p.m. Central Time on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The Mondays will be on whole health. Wednesdays will be guided mindfulness practice, and Fridays will be for kids. Today's going to be amazing. We get to introduce you to one of our very favorite human beings in the world. And I think she's going to offer a lot of great support. So I'm going to turn it over to Felina. Thanks so much for logging in, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. And welcome again, everyone. It's a real joy for me to be able to welcome Twyla today. Before I introduce her to you, I just wanted to begin with an in and down practice, just a brief moment for us to do some mindful breathing and come into this time and space together. And so if you would just settle into your seat and take a few deep breaths with me. So taking a moment to just get comfortable and checking in with your body and seeing that the body is well supported in your chair. And then taking a deep breath from the bottom of the belly here. Inhale together. And exhale completely. Inhaling again. And exhale completely. One more full belly breath here. And exhale. And now noticing how the body is sitting in the chair. Taking a moment to bring attention to the mind and noticing thoughts that may be drifting by or perhaps capturing your attention. Just taking a moment to turn on that interior observer, noticing the activity of the mind. From here, we can bring the attention to our heart space, checking in and noticing any emotions that might be surfacing or perhaps lingering under the surface. And then dropping down into the belly center, bringing attention now to the body, noticing sensations on the inside of the body, as well as on the outside of the body. Just tuning into sensations. Now bringing your attention to the hands. You might like to place the hands in the lap, palms up. And just giving all of your attention now to the palms of your hands. Noticing the warmth and the pulsation of the blood flowing in the hands. Noticing what it's like when you direct all of your attention to the palms of the hands. In a sense, just letting all of your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations drift into the palms of the hands. From here, we can cultivate some gratitude for this space and time, for this opportunity to gather together in this way. And giving thanks especially for Twyla and for her willingness to take time out of her full schedule to be with us today. So why don't we all do that, just gathering up all the gratitude that we can and sending it to Twyla. Just flooding her mind, heart, and body with gratitude. So we recognize that these are really difficult days for all of us, and each of us is coming into this webinar from various places across the country and around the world, and the conditions of the pandemic is different in all of these places. And so we here at Gravity are really wanting to create space to be available to you and to be a support to you as you are navigating the impact of COVID-19. And so we quickly pivoted and adapted last week to learn how to create a virtual space with you. And it seems like everything was spinning very fast as Chris and I were pivoting and adapting. And it wasn't long after kind of getting familiar with Zoom that we thought, wouldn't it be great to host regular webinars on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday throughout the month of April. And what would those webinars be? It was like instantly we thought Whole Health Monday would be a great idea. And as soon as we had that idea, it was like, then the next idea came, and it was like, let's get Twyla. Hopefully Twyla can do it. And so we literally put this webinar together just in the last few days. Like everything just started firing really quickly. It's amazing the creative energy and innovation that came together for us. And that Twyla was available and she was willing to come together with us. We're just so grateful. So Twyla is a licensed professional counselor and in the state of Georgia. And she is a national certified counselor and certified clinical trauma professional. And she brings with her not only a wealth of professional expertise, but a lifetime of experience, all kinds of incredible experience that I know she can draw from to find resources of support for you today. But Twyla is also one of my best friends. And I was thinking this morning, I was like, how long have we known each other? And can you believe it's been 20 years?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. We've known each other for so long through so many things.
Yes, it's
I love it.
Yeah, me too. So I'm so honored that you would be a part of our first Whole Health Monday. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and thinking of me. I mean, it's truly an honor and a joy to be able to share on these things. So thank you.
Good. All right. So we put together a little poll, everybody, and I'm going to try to launch that now. We just want to get a sense of our audience. And here it comes. If you would fill this out now, you'll see there's two questions. Are you presently experiencing anxiety related to the COVID-19 pandemic? And are you presently experiencing depression? We just kind of want to get an idea of where everyone's at. And once this is filled out, I'm going to see if I can make it viewable for all of the attendees so you can get a nice idea of who's gathering with us. We had over 168 people register for this webinar today, and it looks like presently there are 90 people in attendance. Okay, so we've got 62 of 90 people who have voted. I'm just going to give it another few moments to see if anyone else would like to vote. If you see that poll on your screen, some people may be calling in from their telephone and not have access to the poll. It looks like we have a couple more people who just joined. If you are able to see the poll on your screen, go ahead and answer these two questions. We're just getting an idea of who's gathering with us today and how you're relating to anxiety and depression. Okay, and I'm going to end this poll. Thank you to all of you who are able to fill that out. Let's see if, yes, it looks like I can share the results here. So 64 of the 92 people gathered answered, and it looks like 72% of you are presently experiencing anxiety due to this pandemic, and 33% of you are experiencing depression due to this pandemic. So with that in mind, Twyla, I wonder if you could speak to what you're seeing in the way that people are responding to COVID-19 and the impact that it's having on our lives.
Right. So first of all, I just want to say, obviously this webinar is not all inclusive. That would be so hard to, talk about everything that people are responding and how to take care of ourselves. But, anxiety, as this poll shows, tend to be the biggie, and depression as well. But there's all kinds of ways that people respond. So it's important to kind of begin to find awareness of what sense that you're responding. We've seen hoarding, we've seen, you know, people, you know, I've heard comments like, should I take my money out of the bank? I've seen people numbing out, you know, there's a slew of responses, but I think it's really important to understand whatever emotion we have to be able to identify it. And, you know, when we think about anxiety and depression in this context, you know, I hear all the time, like, oh, you know, I'm having anxiety, this is terrible. But you know what? This calls for anxiety. This is anxiety provoking. So I want you to have this sense like, you know, there's some appropriate anxiety. Our emotions signal to us that something's happening. And so if it's anxiety, things have changed. There are pieces that are out of control for us. And that brings anxiety. You know, there's anxiety that if a truck's coming down the road, we want to jump out of the way. If suddenly we lose our job, we want you to be able to think what's happening. So there's a certain level where emotions are really important. Anxiety plays a role. It's important. Depression, you know, is an important piece to understand what's happening. You know, sometimes people need to lay low to be able to reserve some energy. So I think, you know, as we experience this anxiety or depression, to recognize, well, this calls for it. I'd be more concerned if he was like, no big deal, whatever, I'm gonna go about my day. I don't care if I get it or not. So, you know, our emotions, our responses are important. The thing that I could get concerned about is when, you know, you begin to shut down so badly that you can't function. But there's a sense that this anxiety is typical and normal, and it can kind of spark some parts in us to start to act if we have that awareness. So I think there's, you know, our emotions, our anxiety, depression can really be an important piece in this process of responding to a crisis.
And so when we're experiencing anxiety in the way that we are during this unprecedented kind of experience,
yeah,
what do we do about it? Well, how do we, if we can first name it, then what?
Yeah, that's really, you know, that's the thing. It's like, okay, I can name it, I can name my feelings, but what is it signaling to me? You know, and I think for a lot of people, you know, we don't feel safe. We don't feel like we have control. So what happens is, how can we create a sense of ourselves and how we can function life? You know, it really brings up the question of how can we create this safety for us again in our life with so much that's being thrown at us daily, you know? And so it goes back to that piece of curiosity. How am I responding? And if I can think to what I was like before the pandemic started, what are those pieces that would help me feel safe? You know, before we would go to the store and there was a lot of germs, right? But it was on a different level. There was more control. I felt like I could go home and wash my hands or whatever, and I wouldn't have to still be thinking about, well, what if the germs are there or whatever, you know? So I think part of this is, you know, to begin to get curious, you know, how did I feel safety before? And to bring the pieces that we have, that we can, back to us. You know, one of those things is that I think is really hard for us is that we can't connect with people as well, you know, but I think there are still ways that we can connect with people. Things like Zoom, FaceTime. Thank goodness we're in the age of technology where we can have some of that. Another one is, if you think about, you know, anxiety and what it is, a lot of times, if you think about it right now, wherever you're at, you know, I'm in my office, you're in your office, Felina, there is a threat up there. There is a crisis, but the truth is right now, in this moment, I am safe, right? And so it's informing my mind and body, like in this moment, and that's what you're doing when you are kind of guiding us through that meditation, is in this moment, I'm safe. You know, COVID's not coming at me in this moment. I know my space is clean. I know that, you know, no one's gonna come through my door. People tend to be respectful in my building. So I can tell my body, if it's feeling anxious about it, hey, it's okay. This is where you're at. And tell my mom, you can be quiet. This is where you're at. So I think a lot of this is this internal work. If we begin to listen to our body and our mind, you know, our body tells us a lot through jittering, through movement. Our mind is thinking, oh my gosh, what if my computer is dirty or this is dirty? You know, to say, hold on, wait, it's not true that my computer is dirty. You know, I cleaned it, I saw myself. Hold on, it's not true that, you know, I'm gonna get it if I stay home and stay safe or whatever. So I think it's, you know, really being able to have that accurate truth and to calm ourselves and to do that work of that regulation to find out where we are and find out, is this coming from all the what ifs? I mean, we can always be feeding ourselves those. But truthfully right now, I'm safe. And if we keep kind of emptying that bottle of anxiety or that low fatigue depression, saying, hey, I'm safe, we keep, you know, it's never going to overflow, get to the top and explode. You keep emptying a little bit. You know, you think about a glass of water with drips, right? If you keep dripping it with this anxiety, you know, over time it's going to flow. But if you can empty it little bit by little bit, saying, hey, I'm safe, I'm okay, I showered, whatever you had to do, you know, I have food, then it can manage that better. But it's, you know, it's a discipline to do that.
Yeah, so it sounds like, first of all, we must notice and be able to name what's happening for us, name the anxiety, and then find ways to create safety and do things that remind us that we are safe, which really brings to mind as you're talking, you know, how much of the fear and the anxiety is coming through when we're going into the future, when we're thinking about what's going to happen, right? And
what
so
could happen?
Yeah.
All the what ifs.
Yeah, all the what ifs. So it's like bringing the mind back to right here, right now, reminding myself what is true.
Yeah, this accurate truth, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, you know, kind of deviating outside of that. That's just too much for any of us.
Yeah. So it seems like you're also kind of touching on this idea of self-care in a time like this when we are struggling with anxiety, or perhaps it's depression, because of course a lot of this self-isolation is triggering depression. So when we're able to name what it is we're experiencing, then doing things that can take care of ourselves. So down regulating first, like you're saying, calm the system, remind us what's true, remind us that we're safe. And then how do we take care of ourselves?
Yeah, that's such a good question, you know. And I think, you know, we hear all about this term self-care, and it's always this type of thing like get a massage, go on vacation. The truth of it is, even before the pandemic, like most of us can't do that on a daily basis. You know, there's finances, there's time, you know, people are tugging at our sleeves. The truth of it is that we have to learn self-care within the chaos of our daily lives. And I think this pandemic is honestly no different. You know, there are some differences about it, but I'm going to start with what I was saying before. You know, self-care is watching your mind and saying, hold on, what's going? That's truly self-care. You know, if you're driving to the store, taking a minute to breathe deep, that's self-care. You know, but I think another thing I can't stress more is this connection with others. As I mentioned before, you know, humans across the board are made to be with each other always. If you think about, you know, prison, the ultimate, I heard Basil van der Kolk speak about this recently. He's a great trauma therapist and he's putting out a lot of good resources, but one of the biggest ways we punish people is isolation. You know, so it doesn't matter if you're an introvert, if you believe that you don't like people, there's someone in your life who you connect with, right? And that doesn't, it's really not about the number, but it's about the quality of the, you know, who you connect with and what you get from other people. So, you know, I think, you know, some of us have to really make choices who we talk with, make sure it's life-giving and not taking from us, but make sure you're connecting with someone, you know. And again, we got FaceTime, we have Zoom, we have Messenger, there's all kinds of ways, even just calling and hearing another voice, you know, waving to someone on the street, smiling at someone, that, you know, face to face, we take it for granted. We really do. And it's so important that we're doing that. Even if you're fighting with someone, I think that human connection, someone's responding to me, I'm here, is an important thing. So there's that human connection that I can't stress enough in some way. Another one that I think is really important is media, is to really watch how much we're taking in. You know, I think it's so important to be updated on what's happening and informed, and know good resources that are accurate and truthful. And if that's all we're listening to all day, it's just going to be too much for any of us. And so, you know, to know your boundaries of what's adding to anxiety and depression and fatigue, and knowing which is helpful, informative, and what you need to do. But you know, when I hear that people are just listening to the news all day and they can't get off their sofa, you know, it's time to draw some boundaries around that. You know, I think these kinds of times bring out our brain patterns and our body patterns, things that we do when we're anxious or depressed, and, you know, begin to make those shifts in that, you know. And the piece of it that's hard is it's not a magic wand. It just doesn't happen where we make these thinking and, you know, how we contact, all these things. It's not this magical shift. It's a discipline. It truly is. And I know that you've said that yourself, like, we have to actually work with to structure this, because otherwise we're going to stay in our old patterns. You know, if we could change things magically, all of us would. But once we structure it out and actually practice it, even when it's hard, that's when the change happens. You know, I hear that constantly. How can this be different? How can we change this? It's like, it's the discipline, it's the work, you know, and that's when people begin to see change.
Yeah, thank you for that. It is hard when we get stuck in patterns of unhealth to make a different choice, right?
Yeah.
Can you say something about like, just give an example of maybe baby steps toward choosing health? And before you answer that, I want to let everyone know that we're going to give some time here in a few moments for question and answers with Twyla. And at the bottom of your computer screen, there is a menu. On the far left is the mute button, the microphone, and then the video. If you keep going over, you'll see Q&A. I'm wondering if someone can type in the chat box and just let me know when you open that Q&A, are you able to type questions? Yes, awesome. Okay, so that's where you want to direct your questions when we have time for that. And you can do that at any moment now, and then I'm going to moderate those questions for Twyla. So instead of using the chat for your questions during the Q&A, use that Q&A box. And now back to you, Twyla.
Well, I think that, you know, the word baby steps is key, Felina, because it's like, you know, it's when we have anxiety and depression in life, we can't just get up and go, right? And so baby steps is really the key, that awareness, you know, what can I do? So, you know, I think sometimes that can look simply as sitting up and stretching. I mean, really getting that body. I'm not going to get on my chair, but I'm going to move my body, you know, something as simple as that. You know, sometimes I get my clients to do that, they kind of laugh, but it's like, that is so important that you can just do that, you know? So I think something, you know, the baby steps is really the key, and building that sense of, okay, I can move a little bit, I can move a little bit more, you know, don't kid yourself in thinking, I'm going to just, you know, have this thriving, productive day. Like, you know, sometimes I'm not like that either. It's this small increments of, you know, I can do this. Sometimes I think, you know, even putting a timer on, put your 30 seconds on. I'm going to practice this thing for 30 seconds. That's it. I'm going to quit, even if I want to do more, you know, and then later, maybe you can extend it. But kind of beginning to inform your body and mind, we can do this for 10 seconds. We can do this for 30 seconds, you know, that mind and body is so intertwined that if we can do that, you know, those tiny, tiny things, actually, if you start doing it and doing them in small increments, you're going to soon look back and go, oh my gosh, I did it for a whole 5 minutes now. You know, I did whatever for 5 minutes. And then, you know, don't kid yourself, you're going to sit there and meditate an hour. If you've never done it, you might fall asleep. Do it for 30 seconds and be curious about what it's like, how it's painful, how it's weird, how it made you laugh, you know? So I think baby steps, like you said, is really the key to all those things.
Awesome. Well, Twyla, I wonder if you have any other, before we go into the Q&A, like any other personal reflections on, you know, mental health and wellness as it relates to anxiety and depression, or also some resources that you might want to point people toward?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, life will change. It always does. You know, in the moment, we just feel like we're in over our head and we're drowning. And it might be this way for a little while, but life always changes. You know, I can't tell you what it's going to look like in a couple months, but it will be different, you know, and to have that little string of hope. Sometimes it's no thicker than a spider web, but if we can just be like, it will be different in some way and hold on to that, I think sometimes that's what carries us through some of those hardest moments, those darkest moments. You know, can I read a really short poem to you?
Yeah.
With you guys? This is one of my favorite, and I feel like it really pertains to this. It's my favorite poem. It's by Wendell Berry, and it's called To Know the Dark. Some of you may know it, but it says, to go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark, go without sight, and find that dark too blossoms and sings, and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. And you know, we all have different ways to see that, but I think even in this dark time, there's something here. And for us to, you know, take a moment to listen to it a little bit. And what's here? You know, what's this mysterious movement in all of this that's so new and different? And I think that's a really important piece to kind of listen to what's happening. And just the last piece I want to hit on before sharing some resources is that we all are resilient. And I know it doesn't always feel like that, but the truth is we are. There are things that we've all overcome. Even if it's years of depression, you're still here. You're still trying to figure it out. You're still some way putting a foot in front of the other in some way. It's not that there's no resilience, you know? And so there's parts of us that know how to move forward. It may feel really heavy, or it may feel like it doesn't fit us well, but there's pieces of us that can somehow move. And I think, you know, if you reflect on your life, even if it's been something really, really difficult, how did you overcome that? You know, how there are things there within you in your community that helped you figure it out. Maybe it wasn't how you thought it would feel, or the outcome was different than you expected, but you moved through it somehow, and it changed you somehow, and it you know, brought a different part of your identity to light. So really listen, you know, in this time, and reflect on those times when somehow you made it through. You know, it's so uncertain, it's just so hard to know, but you did. And I think that might give you some clues that, okay, I can figure this one out too. It may not be awesome or fun, but I can move, you know, and I think that's the thing. I think that's the hard thing. We're always looking for, well, I want it to be good. I want it to be fun. I want it to be easy. Well, it's not, it doesn't always feel that way. And just because it doesn't feel that way doesn't mean you're not doing it. And I think that's a really important distinction to make. So yeah, so this is it's a new normal, you know, and I think through all this, have compassion for yourself. You know, I think we get so hard on ourselves by looking around, by thinking we need to be someone else. But the truth is, all we have to do is try our best. This is new. This is completely new. Think about kids who are discovering new things and making mistakes. You know, in some ways we're kind of back there again. And so to be kind as we're kind of feeling our way through this. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Twyla, for that. You know, and it really is uncharted territory for so many of us. And if we're struggling with anxiety and depression, it's helpful to remember that this too will pass. It seems like that's what you're getting to. Like this will, everything changed and everything's going to change again. And there's whatever we're struggling with right now, it's not forever. And that some of the hardest things in life end up producing the greatest fruit in our life, right? Like they sometimes, what is it? No pain, no gain. So don't be discouraged if it's hard right now. Like there's something really beautiful and wonderful that can come from what we're experiencing, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I want to make sure that you have a chance to share resources. And then let's get to some questions because we've got some good ones here that are waiting for some responses. So are there some practical resources that you want to put out there for people if they're, especially, you know, for those who may be really needing some professional support, where to turn, especially during social isolation?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, the suicide hotline is, and I'll say in a minute, is there. You don't have to feel suicidal. It's there for anyone just having an emotional distress. It's free. They're there to talk to you and to listen. So that's 1-800-273-8255. Anyone can call and talk about they're having a difficult time. You don't have to be suicidal. Another thing,
I'm going to put these in the chat for people too.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is to, you know, like I know that Georgia has a state hotline. So I would Google, if you just put in like state hotline, I did that earlier today, and all like different states started listing. So each state has their own crisis hotline. And what that is they know how to connect you to local helpers in the area, depending on what you need. Another one that I want to put out there is the Trevor Project hotline for the LGBTQ community, which is 1-866-488-7386. You can also text and chat, but that's an important resource where people feel safe. And then the last one that I'm going to share is just the Child Help national hotline. I know that you think about it, you know, a lot of, if you know a kid maybe next door or, you know, in an apartment building, you know, some of these kids are really stuck with people who are not nurturing and kind to them. And so I think, you know, if you know of them, they come to my mind. That's 1-800-422-4453. But, you know, everyone get help. And, you know, it's not just therapists. There's spiritual directors. There's your neighbor who's a great listener. There's all kinds of people. I know teachers are also, you know, making themselves available. I've seen that my kids' school district, you can to talk to them if something's difficult or hard. So just make sure that you're getting the support and help you need.
Thank you, Twyla. Thank you so much. You know, I'm glad you asked about, or you mentioned children. One of the attendees, Katie, is asking, can you speak to how we can help our kids who are struggling? Specifically, my daughter covers her fear and anxiety with anger. How can I best help her?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing to do is, that's really good, is this is hard. I'm a parent of 3, so I know, but to really communicate calm and empathy. And I know that's hard. Sometimes us parents have to kind of take our stuff and set it aside and say, okay, that's for me to deal with. But I love it that you can recognize that that's fear, that her anger is really fear. And to reflect that, it seems like you're having such a hard time with this. That's completely fair. This is a really uncertain time. So I think reflecting that and letting them know that you see that and you're with them. Maybe if there's ways that through their anger to say, can we sit together? Just depending on, what's going on with that. But I really encourage parents during this time to take the time to check in with all their kids and say, hey, I'm here. What do you need? What is this like? What's hard? And even if it's just communicating, we're going to be okay. This is different. This is unusual. But we're going to figure it out. I think communicating that is really important.
Thank you, Twyla.
Yeah.
Sarah's asking, she's saying that she's having a hard time balancing and acknowledging her feelings and sharing them with others, and then being overwhelmed by them.
Yeah.
So any suggestions on how to be present with my anxiety and also set boundaries?
Yeah. So that's a big one. And I think, I think sharing with others is hard during this time. I don't know, I don't know if you have a therapist at the time. It's kind of a safe place. But I think part of this is also when you're having this anxiety, to find a place in your home where you feel safe and to be able to calm your system, saying, if it's a special chair or sofa or bed, to say, I'm on this sofa, I'm here. This is you can acknowledge your feelings. This is a different situation, but in this moment, I'm okay. I really encourage people to be talking to counselors or who is their support that they feel like is a safe place. I know that's really, really hard, and it takes a ton of courage. But I know that a lot of therapists are doing it through phone. I don't know if that's easier, so you're not seeing, a face, or if you'd be willing to do it through video. But I think kind of that initial feeling that panic is to find a place in where you're at, and again, informing, the accuracy of, I'm okay, I don't feel good about this, but in this moment, I'm okay to kind of manage that. I don't know it's helpful. I think it's hard in the long run to have a really helpful answer for that, because I know during, when you have a lot of anxiety, breathing just it's not going to do it, but that's why I really encourage beginning to see a counselor who can help you kind of walk through what's feeding all this anxiety. This is, I think for a lot of this is not just about the pandemic. It's bringing up a lot of stuff. And if it's getting to a place where it's getting hard to manage, begin to see it, especially a trauma therapist who knows how to kind of pull out those pieces. This is feeding, this is triggering for you. Now let's learn to calm the system and teach your body to know you're here right now. You're not having all these things come at you.
Thank you. Okay, Anonymous is saying that this is really interesting. She's wondering if you might have some tips on those living in a multi-generational household or environment where everyone has a different interpretation of stay at home. Examples, some may stay in and want one person to go out. Others think having family over from other households is okay, while someone else going regularly to the grocery store is okay. So what is a compassionate way to have a conversation surrounding that so as not to add any further stress to anyone involved?
That's really hard. That's really hard when you're living in a home where everyone has different ideas about how do we live as this has all changed. So I'm going to first point out, there's not going to be probably an easy answer, because if there was, you would have already found it. But I'm wondering, it depends on a lot. The answer is going to depend a lot. It depends on if people are willing to say, hey, we need a family meeting. We need to sit down. This is a crisis. This is something that really needs our attention. Let's really talk about this. I think if people are open to saying, let's pause, let's come together and find some agreement, that's probably, I'm guessing that's not the case if you're asking, but in that case, you're gonna have to begin to find your own boundaries if you guys can't get on the same page. You know, whether it's you have your room, you know, where you know that you can go and, you know, those people, that's the place where you feel safe. And when you're in the other parts of the house, you're gonna have to clean it a little more or something. But the truth is that's a really tricky situation. But I think if the others aren't, if you're not able to dialogue it about it in a really constructive way, you're gonna have to begin to find your own emotional boundaries and your physical boundaries around that through that. I mean, it's a hard situation.
Yeah, thank you. Emily's asking, during the day, I feel like I'm able to employ some of these practices to manage anxiety, but sleep has been really restless for the past week or so. Any suggestions on how to improve sleep during these times?
You know, it sounds like maybe, I wonder if your mind is starting to think a lot. You know, during the day we can kind of keep busy with it, even with whatever tasks we have, but I'm wondering if night you begin to think about things. So I would first kind of address what's keeping me up. Is it my mind? Is it my body? Is it, you know, and I think, again, if you can kind of identify, you know, thinking or a tense body, to begin to calm it. You know, there's things like mindfulness or body scans. And I know that those are sometimes hard to begin to feel the benefit of those. Sometimes, like I said before, it's a discipline and you don't always feel it right away. But I would, without hearing more, I think if you kind of can identify what is it that is keeping me up or waking me up and targeting that spot, that maybe would be a helpful place to start.
Yeah. And then I could just add that I have found yoga nidra practice in the evening to be really, really helpful for calming the mind and the body. And Insight Timer has some good yoga nidra for sleep meditations if Emily would like to check those out. And then I'm going to also offer an herb recommendation. So this is a natural herb that my functional neurologist actually has recommended to me, and it's called valerian, VALERIAN, valerian. And he says it's completely harmless, it's not addictive, anything like that. Valerian is an herb that might be helpful. And melatonin used for some short periods of time, I understand can be helpful too if you need to kind of add some other supplements. But I think you've really identified what's important in terms of trying to get a handle on, is this coming from the body or from the mind, and then finding strategies and solutions to address that, the source of that anxiety, right?
Yeah.
I think we have time for a couple other questions. Let's see. Brianna's asking, could you talk more about what to do with the anxiety that shows up in our bodies and what to do with it, like headaches, stomach issues, sore muscles?
Mm-hmm.
After the awareness, how can we help those physical reactions? Yeah.
That's always kind of the $1 million question. Like, okay, I can name it. Now what do I do with it? How do I stop it? And first, I want to say seeing a trauma-informed therapist can help. There's, they've been trained in learning what's keeping this trauma stuck in the body. And it's typically not just one little thing that, we have anxious. It's usually like these layers of things that we've experienced in our life. And it doesn't have to be super traumatic things. It can be, someone gave us a dirty look in 3rd grade and I just didn't feel like I could speak up again, or, I ran out to the car and you know, someone threw a ball and it whizzed by my head. And, you know, so it can be small things, but a trauma-informed therapist can really help you understand more deeply what's happening with this anxiety that's really stuck in your body. But I will say, kind of acknowledging it, you know, that's a big piece. I know I have this anxiety. I'll show you a tactic. All trauma therapists know this. It's called the butterfly hug. I don't know. Do you know it, Felina? Yeah.
I think I do know this one. Yeah.
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 It's tapping. And what this is bilateral stimulation, right? We're getting right and left to talk. Because what happens is when we experience trauma on any level, our right and left can stop talking. You know, we want right and left to start talking again. It's that rational with the emotional. So many times I've heard people say, well, rationally I know that, rationally I get it, but I just can't get over it. Well, it's that emotional that it's not catching up. So this right and left stimulation can help begin to get that emotional and that rational to catch up with each other. But
Love
you know,
that.
what was that?
I just love that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make a note of that for the resources for later.
And I think too, as you notice that anxiety in your body, it's that discipline of, in this time, this isn't happening to me. You know, think about when you feel that anxiety in your body, think about where you felt it before. And some people can pinpoint it, and a lot of people can, and that's okay, because they didn't recognize that it was traumatic for them. So if you can kind of pinpoint, where did this come from, and then inform your body, I'm not there anymore. I'm not when the ball whizzed by my head. I'm not there. I'm here. That can begin to kind of decrease some of that anxiety. It's a discipline in those moments to say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what's happening. I am okay.
Twyla, how would someone find a trauma therapist in their area?
So that usually people, you know, psychologytoday.com, they're really good at kind of filtering these different things.
Did you say traumapsychologist.com?
Sorry, no, psychologytoday.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They have all kinds of filters of what you're looking for.
Great.
And yeah, also the, it's missing my mind right now. The IATP, I think they have a website of Trauma-Informed Therapists International. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I can send it.
No, that's all right.
To you.
Send it to me and I'll put it in the follow-up email.
Yeah. They have, you know, if you just even Google like trauma-informed therapists,
yeah,
or trauma certified, but there's a website that actually hosts people, you know, you can find counselors on there, but you can just ask too, you know, you can ask if, you know, have you been trained in trauma therapy? You know, you're right, as a client, it's so important to ask, who are you? What training have you had? What are your techniques? You know, if I would ask for that free 15-minute consultation, go meet with them, you know, how do you handle these things, and see if it resonates in you.
We have time, just a couple of minutes here. If you could respond to this question, I think it'd be really important. Trish is asking for those of us who lean more on the depressive side, because we have given a lot of attention to anxiety, because that more of us are experiencing the anxiety, and that's a really initial kind of response to this crisis. But what about the depression, and how can those who are struggling with depression stay motivated?
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard. I will say it depends. I'd want to hear about the depression before, to kind of give you clues about what, again, is feeding this depression as well. Think about, like, if you've had depression before this, what was it like and what was feeding it, and kind of understand what's happening in that place. So there's this part of me that it's hard for me to say, I'll be honest, like, well, just, you know, take a walk around the block, you know, it's just not that easy. And I get that, you know? So I think, you know, if you can find those tiny baby steps in any way, you know, sometimes even sitting up, just sitting up, you know, that's to be applauded. But I would really, you know, encourage you to see a counselor in the area who can help you dig deeper about what's really holding this depression in your body, you know. But again, you know, the easy answer is the mind and body are really connected, so deeply connected. And if you can somehow get a little movement, you know, your brain is going to respond in some way. And I know that's hard. I know that's really hard. I wish I had easier answers.
Yeah, thank you for addressing all of these questions. And thank you to all the attendees for being with us today. I want to just bring our time together to a close with letting you know that the recording of this webinar will be at the Gravity Center Vimeo page, but in the follow-up email that you'll get for having attended this webinar, in that follow-up email, we'll have a link to that recording, and we'll have as many of these resources as possible listed there too. And the next Whole Health Monday will, of course, be a week from today. And we're still getting used to the whole webinar system here with Zoom, but I think it's the same. It's going to be the same link for each of the webinars, but you do have to register for the webinars that you want to attend. So make sure you do that. You'll have my email address, so if you have questions along the way, just let me know. We'll also have, as Chris mentioned, the weekly webinars on Wednesdays and Fridays as well, so check those out. And those webinars are listed at gravitycenter.com on the events page. You'll find those, each of those webinars for this week and information for the Zoom. And next Monday, for our Whole Health Monday, we will be hosting Marion Gilbert. Marion is an incredible wise healer who is actually the guest speaker for our Enlightening Retreat in July. And so you don't want to miss her. She's a trained physical therapist of 30 years, but she's integrated body intelligence with the work of the Enneagram, working with all three intelligence centers for regulation and liberation. So we'll be hosting her next Monday. I also want to mention to keep informed about what Gravity is offering in terms of these webinars. Stay tuned in our Instagram channel, our Twitter and Facebook channel as well. We'll try to keep those channels updated so you can be aware of what's happening. And for having joined this webinar, you will be automatically added to the Gravity mailing list. So you'll stay informed that way about upcoming webinars and different resources. And if at any time you want to unsubscribe to that mailing list, you can do so at the bottom of that email that you'll be getting, or you can let us know and we'll take you off the list. I just want to make sure that you knew that. So that brings our time together to a close. Let's just all extend some more gratitude to Twyla, whose work is so critical and really crucial, especially during a crisis like this. So we just want to extend you so much gratitude and strength, and thank you for being on the front lines of mental health, and send you all kinds of good thoughts for your family as well.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me, really. I loved it, and for everyone joining us.
Good. All right. Take care, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye.